Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome in, listeners, to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we always talk everything college hoops. You could have been anywhere else on the dial, but you chose to be here with us, Mike and Gus, and we appreciate that. Mike, time to talk a little college hoops. You've been pretty busy out there. What in the world have you taken away from this particular week? We've had some stoppages, some starts. We had some last-second shots. We've had some crazy outcomes that are seemingly impossible to predict. Mike, how's everything going in your college basketball world?
I have to remember, Gus, that when I'm on Twitter, on social media, at Randall Rant, by the way, I have to remember that I'm not always talking to you. Sometimes I think I'm just tweeting and talking to you. So I'm in a tweet with hoopsweiss. And we're just talking back and forth. And Eli used to do the Action Network pod with Eli.
Sure.
He's now at You Better You Bet. Eli Hershkovitz, great guy. Follow him. And he jumps in. And we were talking, Hoops and I, about how great Gonzaga is.
Okay.
And how dominant they are. Okay. And he goes, do you think that they're going to go undefeated? And I said, absolutely. And
who asked that, Eli or Hoops?
Hoops.
Okay.
And Eli jumps in and goes, no, I think they can lose at St. Mary's. Now, I have to remember that, like, I am talking to people who may not know me as well as you. So
okay.
I just wrote back to Hoops, who's like college basketball royalty. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
And Eli, nice guy, good friend. Stop. Please stop. Like, so clearly I came off the Hoops like a total jerk. Okay. Number one. And then Eli goes into some like metric breakdown of why he likes them. When I really wanted to say, it's not happening, guys. And you can provide me everything. It's not. But I have to realize, Gus, that I'm not talking to you. You understand what I mean when I say that. But I can't say that to hoopsweiss. I can't just dismiss a fairly successful program for 20 years with the phrase, just stop. Because we know they're not winning, but I can't say that, right? So that's my week in a nutshell.
Okay, well, I think your lines have blurred. Your communication lines have blurred.
I'm thinking we're on the pod. I'm on with hoopsweiss. I'm like, stop it. Eli, that's idiotic is what I'm doing. What am I? I can't do that. But, like, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you that. We know, like, they're not winning. But that's fine.
Yeah, so looking forward to that game this weekend, obviously. That's one of the ones we'll talk about towards the end of the pod. And, of course, we'll talk Zags, which we usually do heavily on the podcast. But listen, we need to give Hoops his proper respect. One of the first guests that we've had.
That's correct.
On the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast. And he was kind enough and humble enough to, give little folks like us just say like, hey, let's talk some hoops. And he's fantastic and great follow. If you're not following hoops, then like, what are you doing with your life? And of course, we want to give Eli his props as well. Eli, great guy, really smart. And it usually has some interesting takes like the one that you mentioned there and referenced on backed by metrics and stats. So we like both of those guys a bunch.
Right. And the metrics, I understand that. Like a logical person would think St. Mary's could be Gonzaga.
Sure.
Sometimes a logical person like myself would think that Indiana will actually stop losing to Purdue. And that's not going to happen either. So sometimes you have to step out of the metrics and realize like, no, if you start 10 feet away from a door and you go halfway every time, you never actually reach the door. No, you do. You can keep saying you won't reach it because 5, 2.5, 1 1/4. Okay. But you eventually will get there. And listen, Indiana ain't going to be Purdue clearly, and Gonzaga ain't losing to St. Mary's.
I think we can say both of those safely with some confidence. Totally looking forward to that game on Saturday as the Zags are in action. As you might have heard, in Pepperdine, listen, they got some players, Colby Ross and Kessler Edwards on the wing can shoot it a tiny bit. So they won't be afraid to get up and score with the Zags. That's for sure. Mike.
It's 20 right now with 10 minutes left. I got it, Gus, at 27. I'm curious to see if they cover. It was close for so long, too. I'm just curious. It's 20 right now. 10 minutes left.
Their trend has been to go the other way, not stretch it out to kind of like keep it where it's at.
22.
I don't know.
You're correct, though. They probably aren't going to cover. Because Hugh is not that type of guy. But yeah, right.
No, he's not, especially with a respected coach on the other end. I think we have to ask ourselves, Mike, what in the world are we doing here? We need to get your reaction on a couple of things, and then I'll bounce in on the other end as we ping pong back and forth. But like, what are we doing here in college basketball? I think the first place we have to ask that and maybe analyze is Kentucky, Mike. What in the world are we doing here with Kentucky?
The loss to Alabama, the last one this week, is very concerning. Alabama did not have Quinterly. Herb Jones left. He's going to be okay, but looked like he hurt the same hand from last year. 8 minutes he played, okay? Jordan Bruner, 18 minutes, then goes out with a meniscus, had surgery. He's going to return as well later in the year. And they still get smoked by 20. That's a problem. That's a problem. And I thought they had turned a corner. I thought they had gotten better. They had they looked uber impressive and had the massive win. Was it at Florida, I think? And we're like, oh, here they come. Here they come. They didn't go anywhere. And I think what's happening is, look, they beat Mississippi in 2 overtimes. That was the game I think Cal gets kicked out. Okay, here they go. They beat Vanderbilt by 3 at home. That was a little fishy because you thought that would be like a 20-point win. Right. Then Florida, they pound. Here they come. Here they come. Everybody just thinks it's going to happen. That's a bad loss to Alabama. And I got news for you. We'll get to the end of the game. Gus, they're headed to Auburn. That is not the place you want to be going right now. Really quick. Yeah. No,
you do not.
The 3-point shooting faded against Bama, 4 of 18. Crimson Tide are really good. I mean, again, the metrics, I can argue it. Crimson Tide only allowed 31% from 3-point range, only 26% in SEC play. But that's a problem. They need scoring. The freshman Dante Allen, 4-star recruit from Kentucky, he had 23 points, 7-11 against Mississippi State. We're like, here we go. Let's go. Here's the shooter. Died. Nothing. Davian Mintz is still important. Didn't score a ton. Olivier Sarr, he's just a soft big man. He's not a traditional strong big. 14 points, 9 rebounds at Wake. You got to give Kentucky more than 10 and 5. I understand it's a step up in class, but still, you got a million guys around you who are really good, so you're no longer the center of attention. So you would think, Gus, that Olivier Sarr getting 14 and 9 is one of the only few scores at Wake, should be able to give at least that at Kentucky, but he can't. So I think Kentucky's in trouble, Gus. What do you got?
I agree, and I'm going to agree, like, possibly so much that I disagree. I just think they stink. They have trouble scoring the ball at all 3 levels. Yes, they can still defend. And I'll tell you something else. You mentioned the Alabama game, Mike. Those Alabama guards, Shackelford, they lived in the lane. They absolutely did not stop driving the ball to the hoop. And I know that's one of the things that Alabama under Coach Oates has been stressing. And that's the same thing he stressed when he was at Buffalo. Let's take it to the hole hard, and then let's take our open threes, and then we'll live with what's in the middle and try to get to the lane and try to get to the line. But I tell you right now, they just stink. And those 2 freshmen that you hoped would grow up really quickly and mature have just gone the opposite direction. Both Clark and Boston, they are non-factors right now. So if you're 2 like freshmen that you're thinking like, oh, we're going to wait on these guys. Here we go. Here's where it's going to happen. I don't see it happening with either one of those student athletes. And if those 5-star athletes aren't going to do anything, I think you're kind of stuck where you are, which is maybe a middle-of-the-road SEC team.
Yeah, Gus, their schedule coming up. Just go with me. Auburn away. Good luck with that.
Yep.
Georgia away. That is not easy. Not that Georgia's great, but that's not easy. LSU home. All right. Bama away. All right. Texas, the SEC, Big 12 showdown. They got Texas home.
Yeah,
okay.
Bad draw for Texas. That's a bad time to get Texas.
Right. Missouri away. Eves Ponds. Arkansas, Auburn again. Gus is a rough one.
Listen, unless there's some sort of radical change where you said, "Oh wow, this is something. This is something to pay attention to." You mentioned and referenced the Florida game maybe being that thing, but I'll tell you what. After that Alabama game and the factors and the variables that went into that game, and you would think like maybe this is a Kentucky formula to get a win against a very good Alabama team, and it just didn't happen. It went completely the other direction. Mike,
I'm going to make you an offer.
Yeah,
Gus, I'll give you $100.
Okay,
if you tell me Kentucky will make the NCAA tournament and they make it, or I'll give you $500. If you tell me they're not going to make it and they don't. Obviously, if you're wrong, you get nothing either case. Which would you take? The 100 that they make it or the 500 that they don't? So if this season played out 5 more times, like which do you think would happen?
I think they don't.
Yep, I'm with you. Gus, I'm with you. It's amazing we're saying this. I don't think they're making it.
If you look at them getting an at-large bid, I mean, the amount of ground they would have to cover and the amount of teams and programs they would have to leapfrog for that seems insurmountable. And if you look at their, the metrics on the net or KenPom, it's just not there. Like
I'm sorry. This is way off script. I'm doing it right now. Ready?
Okay. Yeah, go.
Gus Randall. Here we go. Tell me win or loss.
Great.
Away Auburn.
Loss.
Away Georgia.
Win.
LSU home.
Loss.
At Bama.
Loss if everybody's healthy.
Home Texas.
Loss.
Away Missouri.
They're stacked up here. Let's give them a win in Missouri. Missouri can't score either.
Tennessee home.
Yeah, loss.
Arkansas home.
Arkansas hasn't beaten anybody on the road. Let's give them a win there.
Auburn home.
Yeah, this Cooper kid is something to watch. I'll tell you that. Loss.
Vandy away.
Win.
Eve Pons away.
Oh, loss.
Texas A&M home.
We all love Buzz. He's going to sweat through his shirt. We'll give him a win there.
Florida home.
Get back game maybe, so let's give him a loss there.
At Kermit.
That one's a tricky one. We love Kermit. Have had him on the pod. They always hard. They defend. Oh, man. Let's go loss. Let's have fun with this.
Folks, they're 4-7 now. Gus has them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 9 and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 9 and 16. What? 2021, folks. Here we go. Gus has a 9-16. By the way, I would tell you right now, Gus, you were more generous than I would have been. So I don't think the 9-16 is like him.
Again, we pose the question, what are we doing here? Oh, my stars.
That's the name of the pod. What are we doing here?
What are we doing here? Okay, let's go to Oklahoma. What are we doing here, Mike? Oklahoma has really been tough to figure out. I'll just start off and then you go on your diatribe. The amazing part is possibly their best player, Brady Manick, hasn't played well at all, and he lit up the scoreboard in the box score a number of times last season. What is going on here with Oklahoma?
All right, I've thought a lot about this, okay? This is kind of like you're sitting there and you're analyzing your favorite sports team, and you don't know if they're good or not, and you're trying to figure it out. I'm on record, Gus. I think Oklahoma's good, okay?
Good.
I wasn't sure. Sure. I'm on board. Here's why. They battled at Baylor. I watched that game. That was not a blowout. That was not a Baylor by 20. Oklahoma hanging around, gets it to 7, goes to 12, gets it to 9, goes to 11. That's a tough place to play. They battled. Brady Manick did nothing. He's really struggling now, Gus. Concussion and also confidence issues. He's just not confident right now. So I can tell bad body language. So he's going to get it right. They do limit turnovers. Lon Kruger's team don't turn the ball over. Don't beat themselves. Lon Kruger teams don't beat themselves. 22nd best offensive turnover percentage per KenPom. The key player for them, man, is North Texas transfer Umoja Gibson. He is flammable. He is ready. He's open in the parking lot. He has a DGAF attitude. 9 points per game, 1.2 steals in only 20 minutes. Don't let that fool you. He needs to see the floor more. 29 points against West Virginia, 8 of 11 from 3. 8 of 11 from 3. 11 points, 3 steals, 3 of 6 from 3 in the pacing of TCU. Again, they play tough at Kansas, no Manick. They battle at Baylor. They beat West Virginia. They beat TCU. They lost by 2 to Texas Tech. That's not a bad team. Bad teams don't do that stuff. I like Oklahoma. I think they're going to have great value going forward, especially at Oak State this weekend.
Mark that down, listeners. Oklahoma value. I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of those teams where you just looked at the score and you were like, wait, what happened when they played TCU? And usually this is really a familiar script in college basketball when we enter into conference play. And then conference play exposes some of like those awful games due to the lack of crowd and the players being out of their normal routine on campus. But Mike, the bigger picture to me seems like every game that ends with an odd result, like that TCU Oklahoma game and a couple other games we'll mention down the line, it seems like that there's less normalcy, normalness, quote unquote, and that's all been stolen by C19. I think it's been really tough to figure out which way to lean on a couple of these games. And maybe in place of trying to figure out which way to lean on wagers or who you feel like might win that particular game, I think there's some sort of kooky combination that we can put together with like coaching / staff, program / culture, and then maybe returning players with like NBA-ish or at least high-level talent combination that we can put together. And like just off like just using that little combination, like the teams that check off the boxes for me are the Zags, check. Baylor, check. Nova, check. Florida State, check. Tennessee, check. Boise State, check. Am I leaving out any teams, Mike, that might hit these boxes that have that combination of like firm coaching, established program and culture, and then some returning players that kind of know the drill that necessarily don't need practice like we've seen with Gonzaga?
One of my favorite ones is Louisville because they're not healthy yet. And I think Mac does a good job. Carlik Jones is insane. I watched him against Wake Forest. I know it's Wake Forest, but he made some big time tough moves. I agree with you. I don't think they're there with the talent yet, but they still have to get healthy and get all their players back. And I think they can be a dangerous team because Mac, I think, is a good coach. A little bit notch below the teams you mentioned. But if I'm going to give a check to Florida State with all the question marks that we have with Florida State, and
those are your issues.
Yeah, I actually, you know what? I actually knew there. I had a feeling of blood. NC State, I didn't bet it because I'm an idiot. That's why.
No, you're not an idiot. Those are just your personal Florida State issues.
Yes, that's correct. I think I got to put Louisville in there, but your checks are solid across the board. Yeah,
and then just some lower level checks. Some of our favorites, of course, that we talked about on the podcast before: Belmont, Drake, Liberty, Winthrop. I think those four teams you can put the lesser level of check marks that check the boxes there. All right, Mike, what in the world are we doing here with Michigan? This team is getting the chatter of being like the tier, the notch right below the Baylor Bears and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So what in the world are we doing here with Michigan?
You can't step in front of a buzzsaw. They're playing at a Final Four level. But I'm going to step in front of the buzzsaw one more time. I think they're going down at Minnesota. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. They still turn the ball over too much in conference play. They don't guard the three. Wisconsin just got their doors blown off. Listen, they are good. They are Final Four good. They can absolutely win and get to the Final Four. No doubt about it. But Dickinson's been incredible. 17.5 points, 8 rebounds, 71%. From the field, 71% from the field. Crazy. Liver, Smith, Brown, they're all 40% from three. They're great. I love how they're playing, but I'm still Gus taking Minnesota. I have a feeling it's going to be like that 5.5 number, which I've said. Home dogs getting 5.5 in the last few years have been like 60%. I love them. Super impressive against Wisconsin, but I think I'm going to go with Minnesota. Tell me I'm nuts.
You're not nuts because that barn has been a tough place for teams to win games. We've seen that over and over again. We saw it last season when Ohio State came in undefeated with one loss, and then Marcus Carr went bananas there. We saw that they are not afraid to play big and to play anybody and beat anybody inside the Big Ten. So I don't think you're nuts. And just to go on the bigger picture here, they are totally thriving with Mike Smith at the point guard position, who's legit floor spacer. He's a shot creator. He's just not like an offensive option with a running hook shot waiting to happen. He's a true offensive weapon as the lead guard. The Columbia transfer is really doing nice things. Of course, his numbers aren't going to be what they were in the Ivy League where he put up over 20 points a game. But I'll tell you what, he's playing really efficiently and creating some more space for Dickinson inside. And as much as we talked about Drew Timme being really efficient and one of the best players in the country, Dickinson is matching him stat for stat. And to be honest, Dickinson might be a little bit better on the defensive end than Timme is. So I'm really impressed with him. He's one of the best freshmen in the country. He's one of the best players in the country. Stop, end of sentence. And you know what else we have to do here, Mike? We have to give Coach Martelli some props. His influence on the bench is definitely noticeable on all.
It's a great point. It's a great
definitely both sides of the ball, right? And Coach Howard is lucky to have like this basketball muse sitting with him on the bench who hit the highest level of success in the sport while he was at St. Joe's, part of the Big Five. If you remember, he had that unbelievable team with Jameer Nelson. And that team, he knows what big-time success looks like, feels like, and what you need to do to prepare to have that big-time success. So having like an assistant coach and somebody on your staff like Coach Martelli, unbelievably beneficial for high-level success, which Michigan is definitely experiencing right now.
I give you them, or I give you the rest of the Big Ten to win the regular season title. Who do you take?
Rest, definitely.
So do I. I know.
Yeah,
That's
rest,
the thing.
definitely.
That's the thing, is when I'm not there yet, but they're great. And Howard's done a great job, and Martelli's been great, and that was a destruction. But yeah, I'm going to go Minnesota.
What was that run? Was it like 30?
It's 36-6, something like that. I mean, it's like,
That's
like their high school team. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a little bit like that, right? All right, what in the world are we doing here with Bowling Green and the MAC, Mike? We have to give everybody their needed love. The MAC is full of legit programs. You know, we saw Buffalo when Coach Oates was there, and they upset Arizona in the first round. Kent State, and we've talked about Danny Pippen on the podcast. He's a stat monster. Akron with LCJ, he's an unbelievable stud. Lead guard averages over 20 points a game. Toledo is actually ranked 67th inside of KenPom, and they're 6-0 in the league right now. Mike, what in the world are we doing here? Because Bowling Green goes and loses to Ball State as an 8-point favorite. Usually I'm not like paying attention to the lines, but this one kind of stood out to me. And then they lose by 24? I can't make sense of this, Mike. Is this just what happens when MACtion takes place?
The MAC is one of the most fun leagues that we have. It's just so much fun to watch. It's great stuff. Friday night chaos. It's just fantastic. Toledo right now, cream of the crop. They're 6-0. Bowling Green would have been with them, but like you said, a bizarre loss at home to Ball State. They were rolling teams. They trucked Ohio, no Preston, but they beat them away by 8. So now they go up to Buffalo. There's a rivalry there, of course. Buffalo's been the creme de la creme of the conference for a while. I expect a bounce back from Bowling Green. If I don't get it, to me, it's Toledo's. Toledo is clearly dominant then. But it's a fun league. A lot of great players here no one knows about. It really is. It really is an exciting brand of basketball with some players who can absolutely make it onto NBA rosters. You named them across the board.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of hidden NBA players that you might find on a 2-way contract, or maybe even a 10-day contract, or maybe just at the end of the bench, somebody that we might discover that's really going to make an impact on an NBA summer league. Mike, a couple of more like MACtion-ish type, games. UCLA wins by 30. Now that Smith is out, that almost makes no sense. We talked about Michigan wrecking Wisconsin, that big run that they had there. Colorado absolutely drills Cal. These are like, usually we have a couple of these like typical school break when school is on break and all the students are away from campus. But now it just seems like these games are occurring more and more frequently. Mike, have you been able to get a handle on what's been happening and to find some of these games that appear to be blowouts that are kind of like hiding in the weeds? Are there a couple of trends that you've been paying attention to? Where have you found a little piece of success along the way here?
Happy for Mick. Very surprised about that game today because their games with Washington State usually are close. Last year, Kyle Smith, Mick Cronin games both went to overtime. That was impressive without Smith. They can shoot the 3. And that's the thing. Smith's going to play solid defense. Sitting in that zone, I think he was. They're going to bomb from 3. When they get hot, they were 7-10 from 3-point range in the first half. Smell you later. So that was impressive. Interesting thing here. Taped the Action Network pod with Stuckey and Colin Wilson tonight. So after you listen to us, go over and listen to this one. It dropped today on the Action Network. What we're doing, Gus, is each week one of us is going to bring in 3 future bets. Okay. And the one guy gives the 3 and the other 2 have to eliminate 2 that they don't like. Okay. So Stuckey gave 3 future bets to win the title. Okay. I'm curious which team you think you would like the best. Okay. And again, the odds are higher, obviously.
Right.
Colorado, St. Louis, or Illinois. So those are 3 teams. Obviously, St. Louis has the worst future odds, the best, I should say. Okay. In terms of how much money you can make.
Correct.
Colorado's in the middle, and Illinois has the best. If you had to knock one of those out, if I said, which one do you think is not going to happen, is least likely to happen to win a title, who are you knocking out?
St. Louis due to foul shooting and lack of scoring in the half court.
That's funny. I actually, Colin knocked out Illinois because he's saying, I think you can get Illinois at a better value because they're going to have a tough schedule coming up. So I wouldn't take them right now. I knocked out Colorado. My argument was St. Louis beat Dayton. St. Louis is well coached. They're making free throws this year, 73%.
Much better.
People are down on them because of the COVID, so they're kind of under the radar. I mean, they were a legit strong team. The reason I'm getting to this after this 20-minute rant is I just don't buy Colorado yet, man. I don't. We saw this last year. McKinley Wright is a special player. They're making free throws at a historic rate, 84% as a team. They're shooting 37% from beyond the arc. They stumbled against UCLA and Arizona, couldn't make shots. Tennessee, they played tough away, couldn't make shots. They beat Cal, no Matt Bradley. Do with that as you will. I just saw this, Gus, last year with Colorado. Remember, we're 21-6. We're 10-4 in conference. Here's how we end the season. UCLA home, loss. Away Cal, 14-point loss. Away Stanford, 8-point loss. Away Utah, I know it's tough, loss. Could you maybe get it together for Washington State? No, lost by 14 in the Pac-12 tournament. So I think Tad Boyle's got to prove something. I think this team's got to prove something. They look great. Their metrics are great, and they could stick it to me here. But if you're asking me, I'm not buying yet.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. You just read down the end of their season, last season. Why don't we just use some further evidence from last season? They're one of the teams that beat Dayton.
They did. I know they had some big wins. I can't take it away from you. That is correct. Big win over Dayton. They beat Oregon. And I get it. They beat Clemson on a neutral. They had some. Yeah, I get it. I know.
And you could make a valid argument last year going into the tournament that you could formulate an equation where Dayton could win the national title.
That is correct.
So I'm not saying like, oh, definitely take Colorado out or definitely leave them in. I'm just saying if you're going to read off the end of the schedule, which they were brutal last year, you also have to highlight the other end of the spectrum where they beat one of the best teams in the country.
Partner, I get it. You're right. I think most people would take Colorado and keep them in there. I get it.
I like that game though. That's a fun game.
Yeah. So like in 2 weeks, I got to bring mine. So I'm going to bring Drake. I'm going to bring Winthrop and Colorado State. Right. I think we know.
We know at least one of them. Right,
the title. I mean, so it's got to be somewhat realistic. But you know who I want to bring: Drake, Winthrop. Okay, Colorado State, Nico Medved. I think he's a Google the one right now. I like his odds.
Oh, that's excellent. All right, Mike. Let's go to the next part. I don't know if this will be a segment, but it definitely needs to be a segment for this particular podcast. Is who needs a shot? And we'll tell you some teams and programs that don't need a shot. And I'll tell you right now, one of those programs is not Xavier. Belmont transfer Adam Kunkel already hit from deep to beat the buzzer for the Musketeers against Mike's beloved Marquette squad. And this time, Colby Jones drained a three to send Providence home. Love that late game magic. And the ball movement on that final possession for the Musketeers looked kind of perfect with Kunkel taking the drive and then that ball bouncing around the perimeter and finding Jones at just the right time, completely wide open. Love shots from Kunkel and Jones. Man, totally impressive. Mike, are you enjoying this late game, late shot making situation that's occurring over and over again?
Yeah, I love, Gus, when small school players go to sort of more high profile schools and make shots. I love it. And those are great examples. And Xavier's hitting big shots at the end to win games. Good for them. Steele's doing a nice job getting the most out of that team. I love it because we knew Adam Kunkel, but not many people did. And that's why, Carlik Jones, Radford, we knew Carlik Jones. Now he's doing reverse scoop shots against Wake. And there's more of that where it came from. So love these situations. Fantastic.
And then who needs a shot? We know it's not Andrew Jones or Texas. Not dissimilar from Xavier. Texas wins one with Matt Coleman earlier in the season, showing his onions. And this past weekend, it was Andrew Jones's turn with a dagger three to win it for the Longhorns in the final seconds against a really strong West Virginia squad. This very well may morph into the story that all sports fans need in 2021 if Texas continues its level of effort and success throughout the Big 12. Obviously, Matt McClung aside, last night with Texas Tech. Mike, any takeaway from Texas or Texas Tech, and just Andrew Jones and the unbelievably inspiring story of a student athlete getting it right and coming back and finding his former form after things look so dire.
The Andrew Jones thing is amazing. The dagger was like 3 years to the day. Shaka ended up telling the team he had cancer, I think. So there's just a wonderful story. Great shot by him. Amazing player, amazing person. Mac McClung, there were actually people, Gus, who said Mac McClung couldn't perform at a high profile school like Texas Tech. That was a thing that was on social media. What are you talking about? I mean, I know Georgetown may be at that level, but they played teams that are at that level in the Big East, and they played very well. But there was a thing I think he's going over his head. Okay, so I think we can put that to rest. 2 big shots. Mac McClung's going to have to step up again against Baylor, but great job by both of them.
And then I think we just have to recap Matt McClung's night, at least the last 2 minutes of that game. If you remember, before he hit that unbelievable 3-pointer to win that thing, he actually tried a pass off the backboard to himself and then was rejected, which seemed like some sort of N1 mixtape, blooper reel. And then he hits that big shot. And then on the post-game interview, he actually disses Fran Fraschilla on the headset and then goes into the locker room and just runs off and to celebrate with his teammates. I mean, how cool is that 10 minutes for Matt McClung?
Yeah, exactly. Took off right in the middle of the interview.
That's crazy. It's so funny. All right, let's get to Gus Got Next. I got 4 players that absolutely have gone off the past week or so. Listen, we're waiting on the sideline at the court. We got winners. We got next. Here's my squad that I'm going to roll with. My squad for Gus Got Next this week includes Isaiah Mosley from Missouri State. Mike, are we aware what's hiding underneath your lovely Drake 13-0 start inside the MVC? Yeah, it's Mosley and the Bears. They're sitting at 8-1, 5-1 in conference, and the 6'5" sophomore guard is playing legitimately like one of the best players in the nation. Stop. End of sentence. Best players in the nation. How does 23.7 points per game, almost 6 boards, 3.5 assists, on shooting numbers that are just bananas thus far? 59% from the field, 40% from 3, and 90% from the line. And he gets to the line almost 7 times a game. His last 3 games are 29 points, 29 points, 29 points. His effective field goal percentage is almost at 65. Yeah, he can carry the offensive load for our squad anytime. Mosley from Missouri State. Hey, how about we stay inside the Big East? Julian Champagnie from St. John's, 6'5" sophomore guard, lit up the Big East and is averaging just over 20 points a game and about 7.5 boards a game, and over a steal and a block a game on the defensive end while shooting at 41% from 3 when he was matched up with one of the best teams in the nation, Creighton. He showed out. 33 points, 10 boards, 3 steals, and 4 made threes. He definitely looks the part. All right. Boise State, we mentioned them a tiny bit earlier, and Devonair Dutrieve, the 6'5" junior transfer from Arizona, is coming off the bench for the Broncos and just wrecking second units inside the Mountain West Conference. The small sample size thus far from Dutrieve includes a 21-point game and a 17-point game with efficient numbers and limited minutes. It seems like he can shoot it from 3 as well, defend multiple positions on the perimeter, and plays with a large amount of activity. We need that on our squad. And then my final spot goes to Tanner Holden, Wright State. 6'6" sophomore guard, did just a little bit of everything in only 27 minutes in the odd 93-55 win over Youngstown State. 24 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals. Tanner is posting over 17 points a game and almost 8 boards a game, and he's shooting it at 55% from the field. That's my squad. We're going with Mosley, Champagnie, Dutrieve, and Holden from Wright State. And we are not going to get off until we lose next week. And we might have another squad to go next week, Mike.
That is such a great group of players. Missouri State has been fantastic. I got to see them against Northern Iowa. They shoot the 3. They're aggressive. They're well coached by Dana Ford. They've played very, very well. Swept Valpo, swept Indiana State. Not easy to sweep anybody here, especially in the Missouri Valley. That's a great call. Champagne's been strong with St. John's, really athletic, could score on anyone. Boise State, absolutely. They are deep. They are talented. They look even better. They were a little up and down in the non-conference. Didn't look as impressive as I thought they should. Then they come in against Wyoming, who's not terrible, by the way. Well coached. Linder came over from Northern Colorado, and they put a hurting on him twice. And then Wright State, of course, Tanner Holden. Interesting about Wright State, when you get them the first time, they get you the second time, like major, major damage. So love that group, Gus. Really love it.
Yeah, you nailed it with Wright State, because they actually lost because a lot of these teams are playing like back-to-back games due to COVID, and they actually lost to Youngstown State in the first game, and then they come back and win 93-55, and that just falls under one of those odd, what are we even doing here results from this season. Hey, Mike, let's take a look forward here. Let's take a look at a couple games that you really like this weekend and moving forward for the listeners out there. What are some of your thoughts? The listeners tune in to hear what games you might like.
So Auburn's hosting Kentucky. I watched Auburn, Alabama with Mrs. Randall. We saw Cooper play tremendously well. And our comment was, I wonder if he can really do that again. Well, he did. 28 against Georgia. I'm in. On what planet and what schematic is Kentucky going to right the ship here against Auburn? Oh, they're home. They almost lost to Vanderbilt at home. Powell should be back. He had the concussion. Freshman shooter, lights out. Now he's playing with Cooper. He was the point guard for most of the year. Wildcats get buried. Thoughts?
I'll tell you right now, Cooper is the real deal. He is fun to watch. He is a difference maker. He is a blur. His change of speeds is NBA-ish. And I'll tell you what, it's a wild ride having him on the court. We saw how impactful he was in that first game, and then that last 2 minutes, he looked like he was like a water bug, out of control, out of water, and didn't know what to do and throwing the ball all over the place. But I'll tell you what, if he can continue to shoot it, not efficiently, but just efficient enough to keep you honest, so he can use that change of gears and change of speeds, I'm really impressed by him. And you nailed it. If you can partner him with Powell in the backcourt, now Auburn's doing something again. And I'll tell you what, Cooper really has the type of motor to run the type of offense and play the way that Coach Pearl wants to play. So I think Kentucky's going to have a hard time slowing down this Auburn team, especially with Cooper knowing, hey, I got Kentucky. I lost a couple of games beginning of the season. This is my opportunity to show out against one of the best programs in the country. I don't know. I don't want to guard him. I certainly don't want to check him.
Next one, Texas A&M at home against Missouri. Road Buzz Williams got the monkey off his back with an impressive comeback win at Mississippi State. That doesn't normally happen to Ben Howland coach teams. Aggies lost at TCU by 28, at LSU by 23, and then they ended up losing at South Carolina. Watched the game by 24. Turnovers, terrible, couldn't score, traveling, awful. But they beat Wofford at home by 18. They beat Auburn at home by 2. And now they're going to be getting points against a Missouri team that's a little sloppy, doesn't shoot from three well. The Tigers did win at Arkansas by 13. So Missouri did win Arkansas. It was a big win, but they got beat up by Mississippi State. Texas A&M is going to punch them, knock them around, dive for loose balls. Very similar schematic to Mississippi State. I like Texas A&M at home.
You know what I like here? I think I like the under here because I think both teams are going to slow it down, slog it. Missouri's not going to try to get up and down. You spoke to the three-point shooting. I think that goes on both sides. I'll tell you one other thing. I think Texas A&M might have the best player on the floor. So I think that if you're going to lean one way, let's go best player on the floor, slow down game, and we'll take Buzz Williams. Yeah, I like that recipe. I think that sounds okay.
Gonzaga at St. Mary's. I already said my thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on this game?
I will be watching this game with I'll be watching this game with enthusiasm and alacrity. That's what I'm going to be doing with this game.
Creighton at Butler. I love the Blue Jays. They're one of my favorite futures here. Win the conference future. You can still get 4-1 on them, Gus. I know Villanova's there, but Villanova's been on a COVID for a while. You're telling me they can't tie Villanova? I think they can. Love the Blue Jays, but don't get tripped up. Butler here at home. Hinkle, Aaron Thompson's back. It's a little frisky.
I agree. Aaron Thompson's going to give that backcourt all the trouble that you're going to get in the Big East. The Big East is traditionally a guard-heavy league. And, of course, Aaron Thompson is one of the best defensive guards inside the league. So you know that they're going to get he at least is going to cause some sort of hurdle and some sort of handicap for Creighton. But I'll tell you what, I think Creighton in this game is going to be a little bit similar to how Gonzaga has been playing and how Auburn wants to play. I think they're going to get up and down enough where Butler's going to find themselves in trouble. And I wouldn't be surprised if this sneaks its way into a double-digit type win situation for Creighton. I love the Blue Jays as well.
And Muss is going to Bama, but Bama has no one. They're really banged up here. Muss, you got to win this one, bud. You're at Bama. They're struggling. They're banged up. No Herb Jones. You're not going to have Bruner. May not have Quinterly. I mean, Gus, Arkansas's got to get this game.
They kind of have to. They have not been playing great on the road, so you maybe lean a little bit Alabama here. Here's the one thing to pay attention to, and this is something that happens often and maybe doesn't get as much attention as maybe it should. Sometimes when you have that big injury, right? Let's think about if somebody goes out and so that team can rally and really put forward a Herculean type effort without that lead scorer, without that point guard, without that lead rebounder. Alabama's missing multiple leaders on their team. So maybe this is a chance for Nate Oates to show the depth of his roster and recruiting, and they effort up and keep it close here and actually can sneak out a win at home. So that's something to pay attention to just overall. When a team does lose a player, I think your automatic knee-jerk reaction is to say, oh, well, they're going to, obviously that's going to hamper them. Obviously that's not going to put them in the favorite position that they normally are. Sometimes these student athletes and these coaches are going to effort up and scheme up to cover up for a game or two. And then after that initial game or two, then those warts get revealed. Maybe that happens here with Alabama, but if I was going to lean one way, I would definitely lean Arkansas because I think Arkansas and Alabama are going to play similar, and Arkansas is just a little bit healthier, and they're going to push the pace, and maybe they have more shot makers that are just healthier.
Sounds good, man. That's all I got.
Well, that's all we got too, listeners. Listeners, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for letting us keep you company during the week, during the busy college basketball season. We're thankful that there is college basketball to chatter about and to get in your ears about. And if you like what you're listening to, please don't forget to give the podcast a follow at SDS Podcast, Efficiency of Keystrokes on Twitter. Go over to the MACtion Network and give Mike a follow at Randall Rant. You can follow all of his information over there on his Twitter handle. And if you really like what you're listening to, don't be afraid to leave a nice, kind review on your podcast consumption vehicle of choice. And later on, don't forget to go check out Mike over on the MACtion Network podcast with Stuckey. They do a great job, and they talk everything you want to know, futures, betting-wise, and we'll break the games down. So don't forget to go listen to Mike over there as well. We're happy to spread the screen-to-screener wealth, so to speak. Mike, I hope you have a great weekend, listeners. We hope you have a great weekend. Please enjoy the games, and I'm with you. Alacrity. That's what I'm looking forward to with Gonzaga and St. Mary's this weekend.
The password is Yaklich.
Cheers, cilantro. Grazie, everyone.